Hey guys! All right, so I am going to tell you the Theseus story. I'm gonna see if it lets me go full screen. If it doesn't, no big biggie. But while I'm playing around with this, I'm gonna give you a little background here. Um, Typically, I like to start with this whole Greek and Roman mythology unit by telling you stories I think you've probably heard before. Okay, so that's why we start with like stories like Odysseus, who is a story that you probably encountered in like world history or something like that. But then we move into Hercules. Okay, so Hercules is a story that like most of us have grown up hearing in some form or another, and so we move through those, and then we get the stories that maybe you're less familiar with. Okay, so I think Theseus definitely falls into that category because even though there have been a few movies made about Theseus, most of them have been completely awful. Okay, so he has not gotten near the media attention that these other guys have. And so I'm going to tell you that. But I feel like this story is that really classic Greek and Roman tragedy, right? Like all these stories that we've talked about so far, they usually end terribly. And this is going to be no different. So unless you're reading like the Athenian version, because he's an Athenian hero, and they give him like a little bit more grace and a little bit more slack. And so it's a little nicer toward the end. But even with that one, his life will tragically and abruptly end because that's how these stories go. And which I know that's what you came to this class looking for. Like you logged on hoping to get a little distraction. In our current climate, I don't know if anybody watches this in the future, but in our immediate context here, we're all quarantined because of the coronavirus. And so you guys are watching this from home and I'm teaching you from home. And you came here looking like, man, I just need Upchurch to tell me a story that's going to end awfully so that my day feels great. Okay. And that's what I'm here to do for you today. And so I'm going to walk you through this story, which I feel like gets a little hokey at times. So brace yourselves for that. But it's not an incredibly long story. So I'm going to walk you through kind of how this Theseus thing goes down. Now, with Theseus, the way his story starts off is he's actually not the son of Zeus. Okay. Which, surprise, surprise, somebody else is having babies other than Zeus in Greek and Roman mythology. That's incredible, right? And so he is actually the son of Aethra and Poseidon. Okay, the only major Greek hero that's the son of Poseidon and Aegeus. Okay, so you got to kind of like suspend your belief here for a second and just kind of accept that some things happen. All right, and so in this particular story, for it to function, Theseus has to be the son of both Poseidon and Aegeus biologically. Okay, so Aethra is always his mom. Okay, and he's a demigod, which means he has to have a god and a mortal parent. That mortal parent is always Aethra. Okay, Aethra always raises him. That part doesn't change. But he has to also, to be a demigod, have a divine parent. That's Poseidon. Okay, so Poseidon falls into that category. But for the whole story to make any kinds of sense, he also has to be the heir to the throne of Athens, which means he has to be the son of the king of Athens, which is Aegeus. Okay, so how? I don't know. It just is. Okay, so he is a guy with two dads. Okay, one mom, two dads. Right, biologically. But either way, it doesn't matter because neither dads have anything to do with his life because he is just raised by his mom and his grandpa. I wonder if I can let's try to do a little clicky click cool stuff with my pointer here. Ooh, look at that. It's like I'm really there. All right, so that's how we're gonna do that. So he is raised by his mom and his grandpa. Okay, the way that whole story gets started is Aegeus, much like several of the gods that we've seen in the past here, is a bad dad. Okay, he's not a god; he's a king, but still he falls into that same category. And the way the story tells us is that when Aegeus is a young man, he's a prince. He is doing his little world tour before he becomes king, and he meets Aethra, and they have a little fling, and they fall for each other and everything is wonderful, right? But then he just gets a call. He says, listen, your dad's dead and you are now king, all right? And so you got to come back, got to take over the kingdom. So he goes to Aethra and says, listen, I got to go back home. Dad's dead. I am now king of Athens, the most powerful city in the ancient world, kind of a big deal. But I'm not taking you with me. Like this thing's just, it's done. It was fun while it lasted, but hey, I got places to be. So, goodbye. Well, as he's saying goodbye, she's like, wait. I was about to tell you, I just found out I'm pregnant. To which Aegis responds, well, that's not great. Still not taking you. Okay, still not going to take you. But here's what I'll do. Okay, I am going to take some of my stuff, like a ring, a signet ring that has my symbol on it. One of my swords, I take that has the symbol of Athens on it. Maybe a crown. I'm going to stick it underneath this giant rock. Okay, and if the child is born and it's a boy and he can move this rock, then if he makes it back to Athens, I will recognize him as my heir. So anyway, gotta go. Places to be, countries to run. See ya. So he just leaves. Okay, so Aegeus, completely a jerk. Okay, because he's allowing for certain things not to happen. For one, does he know that the baby is going to be a boy? No. Okay. Does he know that the child will be strong enough to move that rock? No. Does he know that the baby will even be able to make it then back to Athens as an adult, not as a baby? No, he doesn't know any of that. Okay, so he's allowing for the fact that he will maybe not ever have to do anything with this child or Aethra ever again. Okay, so not a great guy at this point in the story. Okay, well, Theseus is born. He is a guy, but he doesn't know anything about this part of his like paternal side. Like he knows about the Poseidon thing, which I'm not sure how that came up, but I guess it did. But either way, he's not raised by either dad, so he's just raised by his mom and his grandpa, and everything's good. Okay. When he ends up being about 18 years old, the mom comes to him and says, "Listen, I got to talk to you about your dad." And he's like, "Oh yeah, the Poseidon." He's like, "No, your other dad." And Theseus just accepts this. He's like, "Oh, all right, yeah, that makes sense." And so she's like, "But I can't actually say anything to you until I see if you can move this giant rock." Okay. And so Theseus goes over and he's going to move this rock. Now, the thing we got to understand is, I told you this before, there are two big categories of Greek heroes. Okay, you have the heroes of brute strength, which would be people like Hercules, people like Perseus. And then you have the heroes of intellect, which would be like your Jasons and your Odysseus's and your Theseus. Okay, so Theseus, yeah, I can kind of point to him, maybe. Nope. There we go. So Theseus is not known for his strength. So you can see, like in this picture here, he is struggling. Like he cannot pick up this rock. All right. So he goes over, can't do it, and so he has to use his mind instead. And so he gets a rake or some kind of lever, ends up using that instead to move the rock. Either way, though, the rock is moved, and you can see from this lovely clip art that I have here for you that was an incredibly intelligent decision, because not only was he able to move the rock with more ease, but by picking this rake up, somehow the rock also shrinks by like 5 sizes. Okay, not sure how that happened, but it is there. I mean, you can see it, right? Okay, so he moves the stuff, finds underneath the rock the ring and the sword, knows that his dad is a king of Athens. Okay, and so he's going to go and he is going to take on, he's going to go and be recognized by his father. Right now, at this point, the story is quick to say that he chooses to go by land. And it doesn't really seem like it's that big of a deal. But you have to kind of understand the context. Wherever the story takes place, because, in mythology, there's all kinds of mysteries on that. But the fastest way to get to Athens from where he was at was by sea. And he would have had a clear advantage if going by sea, because remember, he has a second dad named Poseidon, okay, who is the god of the sea. Okay, so that would have helped him. Plus, the travel by sea was faster and it was safer. Okay, nobody actually traveled from his town to land or to Athens by land, because the land path was plagued with bandits. Okay, and so it was basically just abandoned, because anybody who went down that path died. Okay, so when Theseus finds out that his dad is the king of Athens, he decides he's going to go to Athens, but will not take the easy way. He chooses to take the hard way instead. Again, it's kind of like this. Imagine for a second that we do not live in a democracy. Okay, this is the United, States kingdom that we have here, and in this kingdom we don't have a president, we have a king. Okay, we're gonna say King Trump in our current setting here, and so Donald Trump is our king, and let's just say that he doesn't have any kids that we know of, right? And so let's say that I find out that I am actually the actual biological son of Donald Trump. Okay, so King Trump. And so I would then go, let's say I go to the White Castle, and at the White Castle I say, "Hey, King Trump, I am actually your son." Now let's say that he believes me, right? He then has a press conference and invites me to come, and then welcomes me in front of the entire nation as his rightful son and rightful heir. Well, how will the American people receive me? Probably not that well, okay, because they don't know me at all, right? I'm just some guy from Missouri who teaches mythology. I mean nothing to them. I've done nothing for them. I'm not an identity that they can connect with. I'm just some random guy that is now going to take over the country whenever his father passes away. Okay, so kind of the same thing. But what if I were able to do something first? Like let's say I single handedly defeated ISIS, or in our current context, was able to discover a cure for the coronavirus. Okay, then I am invited into the White Castle by King Trump. I don't go to him, he comes to me, right? And then while we're having that conversation, let me say I let it drop that, oh, by the way, I'm actually your son. Well, now Donald Trump has the same kind of press conference where he invites the world to know, or welcomes the world, or introduces me to the world, rather, as his rightful heir. But this time, I'm received differently, right? Why? Because I've actually done something for them. Okay. I'm not just some stranger that came off the street and is now going to be their king. I'm somebody who's done something significant to them. Remember, that's the whole context of what a hero is, somebody who makes a difference in the lives of others. And because of that, now I'm going to be received not because of my name, but because of who I am as an individual. That's what he wants to do. Okay. Theseus doesn't want to just go to Athens as some random dude off the street and then become the king, right? He wants to go to Athens proving his own worth by going by this land path, clearing that path out, showing that he can make a difference for the people. Okay, so getting rid of the bandits, clearing that out to where people can travel by that again, opening that road up, doing something for them. So then when he shows up, he's welcomed for who he is, not just because of the name connected to his dad. Okay, so that's what he does. Okay, he doesn't just want to be a name. So he goes by land, and the path of the rest of this story essentially is like the opposite of the golden rule. Okay, he figures out what these bandits are doing to other people, and he just does it to them. Okay, and so for example, the first guy he encounters is this guy named Peirithous, the clubman. Okay, the animation is actually working, which is good. Otherwise, it just looks like Dancing with the Stars or something. So Peirithous, his name means the clubman. And what he does is he hides by the road, and as people are traveling along the road, he jumps out and clubs them. Okay, so Theseus, doing what he does, is he takes the club from the clubman and clubs the clubman with the club. Okay, then he moves on. Right, so that's kind of his pattern here. So like the next guy he encounters is a dude named Sinus. Okay, Sinus is sitting by the side of the road, and he's got some trees. Okay, and he calls out and says, "Hey, listen, you want to help me hold down these trees?" Now, there's no like cultural reason why this made any sense. Okay, like if you're running through England Park and somebody jumps out with a club and clubs you, that's not on you. Okay, you have been assaulted. That is a crime. We understand that is a terrible thing. If you're running through England Park though, and someone yells out for you to help him hold down some trees, you should probably just keep running through England Park. Okay. And it really would have been the same context here. So Sinus calls out, "Hey, you want to help me hold down these trees?" People would help him. Like they put their hands on both of these trees. Okay. Like this. I don't know if you can see me or not. And then he would tie their arms to the trees, stand up. They would like catapult up. And unlike our little PG animation here, the two trees would go opposite directions, ripping the person in half. Okay. So terrible situation. So Theseus does the same thing. He goes up like, "Yeah, of course I'll help you hold down these trees." They then put their hands down on the trees while Sinus is going to tie Theseus's hands. Theseus like flips his hands over on the top of the Sinus's, ties Sinus's hands to his own trees, steps back. Sinus is ripped in half. Okay. Then he keeps moving. There's a dude named Skyron next. This one does have some cultural significance. Okay, so what we have going on here is Skyron has a tub set up by the side of his cliff overlooking this beautiful view. And as people are walking through, travelers are walking by, he is offering to wash their feet. Now, again, modern context, running through England Park, someone says, "Hey, you want me to wash your feet?" You should probably call the police or something. Like that's not normal for us. Okay, but in this context, where the ground was really rocky and sandy, and people mostly wore sandals or nothing at all, it was so easy for your feet to get cut and then get dirty and cause infection. It wasn't like they could just get home and put on some like triple antibiotic or something. If they did not get that taken care of and cleaned up quickly, they could lose their feet. Okay, and so it was customary for pretty much every house you would go into to have a basin of water and usually a slave assigned to this particular task of washing the feet of their guest as they came into the house. So very, very customary. So for this guy to then have a basin set up at where people are traveling and saying, "Hey, do you mind if I wash your feet?" That's a kindness. Okay, it makes sense. Now, the fact that while they were having their feet washed and looking over this beautiful view, he would then run up and push them off of the cliff to feed them to his giant man-eating turtle. Um, yeah, that part was not as nice. Okay, so what Theseus does is he gets himself a nice foot washing out of this and works out pretty well. But as Skyron is running up from behind to push him off the cliff, Theseus grabs him, throws him over his shoulder, and tosses him into his own man-eating turtle, who I guess now has to find meals somewhere else. Okay. The last dude that we then encounter is this guy named Procrustes. Procrustes actually in the very first Percy Jackson book. If you've ever read that, he shows up. Skyron is in actually one of the Heroes of Olympus books too, so you can check that out. But Procrustes also has something that makes sense. Okay, he has a lodging. Okay, so a hotel or whatever you want to call it, who offers people places to sleep as they travel along the road to Athens. And what he advertises is a one-size-fits-all bed. Now the catch is that the bed doesn't actually fit everybody. Okay, and so if you were too small for the bed, he would stretch you out until you fit onto his bed. Or if you were too big, which was actually more often the case, whatever hung over the bed, he would cut off. Okay, and so Theseus punches Procrustes, knocks him into his own bed, and this one he just randomly flexed, punched him. They're both wearing ridiculously short skirts, so I'm not really sure what the deal is with that, but knocks him into his own bed. Procrustes was too tall, and so he loses his head. So that's what happens. Now, there were probably other bandits that he encounters along this way as well, given what the story implies. But those are the ones that we get names of. Okay, so after doing this, he's accomplished it. He has cleared this land path, and people know. Okay, this is something that's getting attention. That there's a guy that's going along this path and is making it safe again. So he shows up in Athens, and guess what? Everybody wants to meet him, not because they know who he is, but because they know what he's done. Okay, and so it works. Now, everything's going great. He gets to Athens. King Aegeus, who does not know who he is yet, invites him to a banquet in his honor. Okay, they're throwing this banquet in his honor. It's exactly what his plan was. And everything's great until Medea shows up. Okay, do you guys remember Medea? She was in the Jason story. And in the Jason story, she started off as a wonderful character. She was a witch, but she was a good witch. And she's the one that helped Jason complete all those tasks. He marries her. Everything's wonderful. And then he's like, you know what? I'm kind of done with you. And so he divorces her, causes her to kill her own children so that they can never inherit the throne, right? She goes kind of insane and is now not such a good witch, okay? Now, with that, she is now moved up in the world. Okay, Jason, king of Argos. I mean, that was a significant kingdom. But now she is married to Aegeus, the king of Athens, the most significant kingdom. Okay, they have kids together. Those kids are now the heirs to the throne of Athens. Okay, now remember, she's already had one set of children denied their rightful position as kings and queens, or kings of the kingdom of Argos. You guys know what I'm saying, right? So she sees Theseus and knows who he is. Okay, either because through her magic she somehow divines this, or she just realizes he looks exactly like his dad. I don't know, but she realizes who he is. Okay, and she doesn't want this to happen again. Okay, and she's already bitter, and so she does not want her kids to lose Athens, and so she goes to King Aegeus and says, "Listen, I know that this Theseus guy seems great, but he's not. He is not great, and we've got to take him out. We have to take him out, and we have to take him out now." And so they decide to do it in an incredibly public way, which seems maybe a little much, okay? But that's what they do. They decide, in front of this entire, audience full of banquet hall thing here, let's just poison him, okay? And so that's what they're going to do. And as he's getting ready to be poisoned, things change, okay? He actually gets out his sword. Either he pulls it out to chop up his chicken or something, which is kind of what the picture is doing down here, or he's just reaching up to grab something and the hilt is revealed. Either way, Aegeus looks over and he sees that sword and knows that's his, the one that years and years ago he had buried under the rock. So he knows who this guy is. And even though he was not such a great man in his youth, he's changed a little. Okay, he's mellowed with age, and he regrets the decision that he made, and so he immediately knocks that poison out of Theseus's hand before he has a chance to drink it, and stands him up and declares before everybody, "This is my son. This is Theseus. He is the rightful heir to the throne of Athens." Okay, so you can only imagine how that made Medea feel. Okay, and so everything so far in Theseus' life is going great. Okay, but then it changes. Okay, so like this next stage, we had like first stage, good. Second stage, good. Last stage, awful. Okay, so this is the next stage where everything continues to be pretty good for a little while. Okay, so after becoming the rightful heir to the throne of Athens, he realizes that something's going down in Athens that's not so great. Okay, I call this like King Minos's Hunger Games. Okay, the reason for that is King Minos, okay, the king of Crete. He comes every year and he takes tributes from Athens and brings them back to Crete, puts them in the labyrinth, and feeds them to the Minotaur. Okay, the reason this is happening is that years ago, when Minos was at war, he left his young son under Athenian care. While his son was with the Athenians, he died. Now, most stories say that it was an accidental death. Like the ones I've read, like he was like playing on a wall, which seems like a bad idea anyway. He fell off, he dies. Okay, well, either way, Minos, though, holds them responsible for the death of his young son. And so he says, if you allow my son to die from this point on, every year I will come and I will take your sons and daughters and they will die as well. Well, Theseus hears about this and he's like, that's not okay. Like we can't allow that to continue. And so he pulls a Katniss and volunteers a tribute. He says, I will go and I will kill this Minotaur. And if I do, you have to promise that you will no longer take any children from Athens. Well, Minos agrees, okay, for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's not completely convinced that this kid can kill the Minotaur anyway, right? If you don't know what a Minotaur is, he is the half bull, half man creature, okay? And so pretty intimidating in his own right. But more than that, it doesn't matter, okay? Because the Minotaur is in the labyrinth. If you know anything about the labyrinth is actually what made this whole deal so terrible, okay? I don't know why the Minotaur is said to eat people, because it doesn't make sense. I mean, cows don't eat people, people don't eat people, so I'm not sure why a cow person eats people, but that apparently was happening. Maybe he was just really hungry. But most of the people that he put into the labyrinth didn't die because of the Minotaur. They died because of starvation, because the labyrinth is this underground maze that's constantly changing. Okay, so once you get in, it's literally impossible for you to get out, right? And so even if Theseus theoretically got into the labyrinth, killed the Minotaur, and then tried to escape, he wouldn't. And for all Minos knows, I mean, the labyrinth, the Minotaur could be dead now because people were still going to die. So it would make no difference in his plan whatsoever. So he's like, yeah, sure, you can come. And if you kill the Minotaur, then I guess I'll stop taking people, knowing that he has no intentions to actually do any of that. Okay. So that's what he does. Now, along this way, he and Minos kind of get into it. And you can kind of see the end result of this here in the clip art. But Minos is a womanizer, which ironically Theseus becomes later too. But at this point, he's okay, I guess. And Minos is like flirting with and harassing the women on this ship. And so, Theseus goes to him and says, "Listen, you gotta stop that." And Minos gets really mad and gets really defensive. And he's like, "You know what? I don't even know why you feel like you can talk to me like that. Like you don't even have a dad." Which the reason he says that is because, Minos knows about the whole Theseus thing, and he's supposed to have two dads. And Theseus says that. He's like, "No, I do. I actually have two dads. I got Poseidon and I have Aegeus." And Minos is like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, why are you accepting this? This is not something that happens. And he's like, "Well, I mean, it did." And he's just like, he can't handle it, right? He cannot handle it. He's like, "Okay, well, fine. I will accept that maybe Aegeus is your dad because you guys look exactly the same. But Poseidon, really? Poseidon, like you're not a demigod. Look at you, okay? There's no way that there's divine blood running through your little scrawny frame. In fact, let's just prove this, okay? I'm going to take my ring, okay? And I'm going to just chuck it to the bottom of the ocean. Wait for it. Okay, lets it sink to the bottom, okay? And he's like, "Now, go get it." Why would this be proof? Well, because a normal human can't swim to the bottom of the ocean. But if he's the son of Poseidon, he can, right? And so Theseus jumps in, goes down there, and he's gone for a really long time. Okay, because when he's down there, he actually meets Amphitrite, which I don't know if this will come back on. No, it won't. When you saw him go down there and kind of swim around for a little bit, he meets Amphitrite, which is the wife of Poseidon. Hangs out with her and some of the sea nymphs for a little while. She gives him a crown of Poseidon. They just sort of chill and they talk about his dad and everything. But since he's gone for so long, Minos assumes he's dead. Okay, and so he's like bragging up on the boat, talking about how he proved himself right, and I mean, he's getting super duper arrogant. Well, right as they're about to pull into Crete, who pops out of the water? Theseus, and he's got the ring in one hand and a crown of Poseidon in the other hand, and kind of like that "what now" moment, which just makes Minos hate him even more, right? And so if that doesn't make him angry enough, as soon as they arrive, the first person they meet is Ariadne, the daughter of Minos. And as soon as Ariadne sees Theseus, even though they have never had a conversation together ever in their lives, just looking at this man is all that it takes for her to fall instantly and passionately in love. And so she goes to him and says, "Listen, I know you don't know me. My name's Ariadne, and I love you. That might be too soon, but hey, I do, and I know that you're gonna go kill this Minotaur. And I think you can. I know you can. I believe in you, but you're probably gonna die because like the Minotaur is inside this like underground maze thing. It's called the Labyrinth, and like you won't escape. But here's the deal: like I am really good friends with Daedalus, and Daedalus is a guy that created the Labyrinth, and he's let me explore it because I'm like super into that kind of stuff, like architecture and things, and like I really want to know those things. And so he gave me this magical thread. We call it the thread of Ariadne because it's mine. Not my name's Ariadne, by the way. I don't know if I told you that or not. But so I have this thread, and I can like tie it off, at the entrance and stuff, and I can use it to like lead me through. And then because it's magical, I can escape. She had a lot of things that she wanted to say, but then she got to the gist and says, "Now I will let you use my thread, which is the only thing that will allow you to come in and out of the labyrinth safe. But will you promise to marry me?" Which just seems so forward, right? Like, in what context do women just walk up to men they've never met and said, I will give you this life-saving device if you just marry me? I mean, they should at least talk first, right? But that's just, I don't know. Don't date people, okay? Like in high school, it's not going to work for you guys. That's really what I'm coming back to, okay? But anyway, what happens here is he says yes. Right? Yes, woman that I've never met before. You seem super nice, and you have a lot to say, and I feel like that's great. I think we could make a wonderful life together. I would like to marry you, and I would really like to have that magical thread of yours. So yes, let's do that. Okay, so he promises to run away with her. Of course, he's going to have to kidnap her because her dad hates him. But they'll work out those logistics later. Okay, so he ends up using that, ties off the thread, goes in to the labyrinth, finds the Minotaur, and even though he's not a brute strength hero, he sort of outmaneuvers the Minotaur, who's also probably starving. Let's just be honest. And then most stories say that he breaks off the horn of the Minotaur and like stabs him to death with his own horn, which is super intense. Okay, so I have like this little baby Minotaur video that I usually show. I don't know. I feel maybe guilty showing this since I just said that he gets stabbed to death with his own horn, but I mean it's kind of cute, I guess. I don't know if you can even hear it. Let me see. If you can't hear this, then there's probably just gonna be some awkward silence right now as you watch this. But I mean, he seems really happy. Yeah, I probably shouldn't show this video. I'm sorry. I apologize to you. So anyway, yeah, that's the Minotaur. So after killing the Minotaur, he then runs away with Ariadne, pokes holes in the bottom of Minos' ship, escapes, and elopes with her. Okay, has every intention of marrying her, at least says that. But then this is where like his entire story takes like a super steep, super dark turn. Okay, he stops on an island and then just abandons her there. Okay, and this becomes sort of the thing that he does for the rest of his life. And some stories try to justify, like, maybe he was in love with her sister, and so he didn't really want to go through with that. Which, I mean, I don't know. Maybe one of the gods tried to like mess with his head and cause him to do this. But if that happened, then they mess with his head for the rest of his life because he does a lot of this stuff. So maybe it's just that Theseus wasn't really that great of a guy. I don't know. But either way, he leaves her, abandons her, and goes back. Okay. When he abandons her there on the island, she actually is found by Dionysus. Okay. And this is like, remember, Dionysus does basically two good things. He's a good husband and a good son. Well, this is where he's a good husband. He shows up, marries Ariadne. She becomes a goddess, right? Like her life actually becomes better after this, whereas Theseus's life becomes like progressively worse. And there's lots of like famous artwork called the Tears of Ariadne. This clip art is not one of those famous pieces. This is just a clip art where Ariadne apparently has the nose of Owen Wilson, but you get the idea. So when he goes back, he also continues to make mistakes, okay, because he and his dad had worked it out that if he survived, on his way back, he was going to flip the sails of his ship so that his dad, who was going to be watching every day from this tower to see if the ship would return, would see those flip sails, which were like a different color on the backside, and know that his son was alive. Now, if the ship returned, though, and it had not had the sails flipped, he would know that his son was dead. Well, in his haste to run away with this woman that he abandoned, he kind of forgot about the whole, sail thing, and he doesn't flip them. Okay, and his dad is watching, sees the sails flipped, and is grief stricken. Okay, he feels terrible about how he had abandoned his son when he was young, and when he realizes now that his son has gone and died for what he considered was a noble cause, he just can't take it, and he actually ends up jumping out of that tower and killing himself. Okay, so Theseus shows up, and everybody is actually in a state of mourning in Athens. They're mourning the death of Aegeus, and they're also mourning the death of Theseus, assuming that both of them had died, knowing that Theseus or Aegeus died because he found out that Theseus was dead. So the ship shows up, though, and lo and behold, out walks Theseus. And at that moment, they realize that the reason Aegeus, the king that they actually loved, died was because this guy, Theseus, who is now their king, neglected to do what he was supposed to do. And so he becomes king, but he becomes king on a very, very sour note. And that, in the non-Athenian version, sort of taints the rest of his life. Okay, he becomes king, but they don't really want him, okay, because they consider him to be irresponsible, okay? And he really sort of is irresponsible. In fact, most of what he does from that point on is he just kidnaps princesses, okay? He stole Ariadne. He steals an Amazon, if you remember from the Hercules story. He steals an Amazon. He steals Helen of Troy, which Helen of Troy is the girl who gets stolen, right? The princess who gets stolen, leading to the Trojan War. Well, he steals her when she's like 13 years old, and then like her brothers, or maybe brothers, depending on how you read the story, Castor and Pollux, kidnap her back. So, I mean, poor Helen gets kidnapped all the time. Okay, now when he kidnaps her, she's so young, he's like, I'm not going to marry you now. I'm just going to lock you in a tower until you're old enough, which is also creepy, all right? But that's just what he does, okay? So not a good thing, not a respectful thing, just terrible. Okay, so after doing that, in his process of stealing women, he actually makes a frenemy, this is a weird story, but it is a story that is more common in mythology than you think. Okay, so he meets this guy. His name is Peirithous, which I actually just call him Perry the Pirate because it's easier and it reminds me of Perry the Platypus, which Phineas and Ferb is the greatest show of all time. But anyway, he meets Perry the Pirate, and Perry the Pirate is a second son of a noble. Okay, and in this society, and it's actually fairly typical, since your first son of a noble family received like 1/3 or 2/3 rather of all the wealth, all the other sons, which usually were quite a few, had to divide up the remaining wealth and basically had nothing. Okay, and so they were meant or were expected to go and make a name for themselves. Well, some of them didn't want to do that. Okay, and so it was not uncommon for second sons of noble families to live lives of crime, okay, go into piracy because they could get wealth fairly quickly, like they had always had growing up, without actually having to do any kind of significant work. Okay, so that's the kind of guy that Perry is. Well, Perry makes a mistake of trying to rob a ship that Theseus is on, okay, and Theseus wrestles him and beats him up, and as his punishment, Theseus requires Perry to be his best friend forever. And this actually happens in mythology more often than you think. I mean, check out the Epic of Gilgamesh. Same thing happens with Gilgamesh and Enkidu. That's sort of what's happening here. Okay, so they become best friends and they just sort of steal princesses together. Okay, and Perry says, "Yeah, I will help you steal princesses, but eventually I want you to help me steal a princess in return." Which, Theseus says is fine. Now, when Perry decides to call that promise in, though, it's a dark moment. Okay, because he says, "You know what? Actually, I know who I want to steal, and I'm really not into the whole princess thing. I kind of want to steal a queen. I would like to steal Persephone." Now, that's awful because Persephone is the goddess of the underworld, who, by the way, remember, was kidnapped by Hades in the first place to become the goddess of the underworld. I mean, can't you just leave her alone? Okay, but that's what they do. And this part frustrates me because they go to steal Persephone, and usually like going to the underworld is like a really big ordeal, and you gotta like figure out how are you gonna get in there. It's not just something you're allowed to do, but I don't know if this part is just missing or if I've just never been able to find it because I haven't. I've looked. But in the stories that are out there, they just sort of show up before the throne of Hades, and that's it. Okay, but when they show up, regardless of how frustrating it is that we don't know how, they're really straightforward too. Like Perry's like, "Hey, listen, Hades, we're here to take Persephone, okay? Because let's just be honest, she's gonna be happier with me, a pirate, than you, a god. So like, if you want to help her, like pack her bags or whatever, that's cool. But like, we're gonna leave today." And Hades plays along, okay? To his credit, he plays along. He's like, "Yes, no, I totally get it. She would definitely be happier with you." Before she goes, can we have like a little going away banquet or something like that? Just to honor the time that we've had together as I have kidnapped her and made her my wife. And so they said, "Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, we can do that. But like, seriously, let's speed this thing up because we're taking her today." Now, you would think that the trick would be Hades is going to convince them to eat something in the underworld, and then they won't be allowed to leave. Like, you eat in the underworld, you can't go. But he doesn't even let them get to that point. Okay, so what he does is he sits them down in the chairs of forgetfulness. Now, the chairs of forgetfulness, the way they work is that when you sit in them, they start sucking your identity from you, everything that makes you who you are, your whole humanity. You don't just start forgetting stuff, like you start losing who you are. And so if you sit in them long enough, you're just a shell. I mean, you might have a human form, you might be able to walk around, but you're not anything anymore at all, just a shell. And if that's not bad enough, he then takes the chairs, puts them in Tartarus, okay, like the dark, scary part of the underworld, sends the Furies to come and play. You remember the ladies that took like the snakes to the armpit in our earlier discussion. Sends Cerberus, the three-headed monster dog, to come and play, and then surrounds them with the water of Tartarus. So there's two versions of those waters. One version is you're surrounded by water, you reach down to take a drink, though, and it disappears. The other version is that you are surrounded by water, or what looks like water, and you reach down to take a drink, and it's actually acid, and it burns off your flesh. Sorry, talking about that, I actually needed to. It's just normal water. So that's what he does. So the moral of that story is don't try and steal the wife of Hades, okay? Now, eventually Hercules comes down and is able to rescue Theseus. So he takes Theseus from the underworld, but he's not allowed to take Perry because Perry is the one who had intended to steal Persephone in the first place. So he has to stay, but Theseus is allowed to leave. However, when he leaves, his story is basically over, okay? Because he sat in those chairs of forgetfulness for so long that literally what most stories say is he goes back, sits on his throne, and then dies of starvation because he literally cannot remember that he's supposed to feed himself. That's the story of Theseus. All right, guys, have a great day. Make wise decisions. I will see you again soon. Merry Christmas. Well, I say that, but now I'm going to have to get out of here and pause it so you can watch awkwardly as I end this video for you guys.